First part here I want to talk about is let's talk about a little bit about the mistakes, first of all, that makers tend to make the most. And in your experience, tell me, like, what's one of the number one mistakes that you see people in the personalization industry start to make?
I think one of the biggest mistakes, the number one mistake, is chasing trends. I think chasing these big trends, chasing quick sales, chasing these opportunities that don't feed your why, that don't feed your brand, that have nothing to do with you, except that I see that a lot of folks are like, oh my god, I can make a quick buck, and in our history, in our experience, a quick buck has never been. It's never been a quick buck. You'll make the quick buck today, but I feel like it becomes a massive expense going forward. And it might seem good today, but but
Yeah.
as far as tomorrow goes, it's heavy on your business, on your finances, and you yourself. So I think there's a lot of caveats to that, and I would say to be careful about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think as fast as things go up, they can go down just as fast. So if you're catching a trend, well, you better catch the next trend because you're otherwise you're just going to be on a downward spiral. So one of the trends that we've seen recently this week, posted in some of the Facebook groups and the maker groups, was a an online charcuterie board. I think it was offered on Walmart. It had that plastic lid to it, right? And what Walmart was doing, I don't know if they're clearing them out or what they're doing, but they're highly discounted down to what, like $12.
Yeah.
And makers are jumping on this deal. Now, I think there's two ways to look at this. Yeah, this is a trend because it's a good item, and but there's also the other way to look at it is people could also use this as sampling to kind of test their industry, test their market, test their customers on if this is a product they like. Now, the issue becomes that that product might not be a reliable source on Walmart being at that product because you don't know what Walmart's doing with that product. Why is it gone from $30 down to $12? Everyone's gobbling them up. Well, if your customers do like it, then you might run into a bit of a problem because your source for that could either price go back up to that $30, or they could run out of inventory, and then you're leaving your customers high and dry. So how do you look at that in those scenarios?
Yeah, I think one of the best things that I've talked to makers before, and they say that to have a long-standing business, you need to make sure that your suppliers have been there for a long time. And that your suppliers, supporting the community, and that for a fact that when you introduce a product, that it's going to have longevity, right?
Mhm.
And in your case, what you just said, you have no idea what's going to happen with that product. Price is going to go up. Maybe there's no stock. Maybe it's just seasonal. And if you go into it and all of a sudden you have 5 core products and you bring this one product and you put all your effort into it, you have to take photography, you have to go do mock-ups, you have to make real samples, then you're going and emailing your friends,
Yeah.
your customers, you're talking to them, you're taking it at trade shows, and you're putting so many resources. Well, you got to take that away from something,
Yeah.
right? And you're taking it away from your core business. So you just really have to be careful on whether you're going to put all your effort into that one new trendy product and take away from your core products, or like you kind of said, you go into it strategically. You go into it and you do product testing and you tell yourself, like, hey, I don't know if this product is going to exist tomorrow,
Yeah.
but maybe I'm just testing a charcuterie board, right? And if this works out, if I buy these 10, if I buy these 30 and I sell out, I know that tomorrow I may have to shift to a more reliable source for a charcuterie board. But if you don't go in with that kind of plan, I feel like a lot of the folks that got into the charcuterie board are going to ask themselves 1 week later, what now? Where's
Yeah.
the next trend? And if you just and this is where you lose your money. If you try to catch that next trend and the trend after that and the trend after that, and if it's not profitable, the little bit of profit you made off of the 10 or 20 on the trend you did catch, you're going to lose out on the next three.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I was alluding to. But to answer your question, that's kind of the belief there.
Yeah, and I didn't even really think about that when you mentioned, you're chasing these trends, but you are putting all this time and effort into the photography, the description, the sales itself, and then how do you even price that item? Do you price it off of the $12 you bought it for, or the potential of that blank going back up to $30? And there's difficulty within that. So the takeaway for me is on a chasing a trend like that, when you got a good deal on a product, or maybe you're getting things from Marshalls that you don't know if they're going to be there again, is you make it clear to your customers that this is a limited time only. You kind of really need to step back and not spend so much time and effort into all the photography and making it picture perfect, because you need to move on to the next thing once that's gone, and keep chasing if that's the plan you want to go.
Yeah. And I just want to preface all this with, it might just sound like Mark and I are talking about, whatever is happening today, but that's definitely not the case. When we started our business,
Mhm.
right, we actually went to Walmart. We got the Rawlings baseball. We were probably one of the first ones.
Yeah.
We went to Michael's and we got the wood box. But then we always knew that we were gonna go to the source,
Yeah.
right? When we were doing the Rawlings baseballs, they first came from Walmart, then they came from Dick's,
Yeah.
because that was the next place we knew, from Dick's Sporting Goods, that was the next place we knew that that was going to have those goods. And then the next thing we did was we went to Premium Outlet, went to Rawlings, got an account, went right to the source, right?
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
we had a plan with that. We knew when we came out with a product, we were going to test small, test it correctly, put this kind of effort, and then slowly scale it and really make sure our costing was right, the product was like we wanted it, and then really launch it and scale it.
Yeah. No, that's a great idea. I think that ties in like the smart product testing that we were doing back then. And another example we have was when we were testing the cigar boxes. We had found some boxes at Walmart and we were staining them.
Yeah.
We were cutting felt that we were getting from Joanne's fabric and inserting the felt. We were making them as premium as we could with those cheap craft boxes. And then we were chasing around Walmarts and they didn't carry very much stock of it. Then we started going to Michael's and Hobby Lobby, hoping they had the same type of product, the same dimensions, and we were buying up all that inventory. But then we started to think like, well, the plan is that if this is successful product, sampling and testing in our industry, what's next? We needed a more reliable source. Then we found Derice, which I think they've been bought out and they've changed names. I
Yeah.
don't know what their name is now. We started buying from Derice wholesale, and that was going good. And then we started buying Derice out. And then we were really scaling that product. And then we're like, okay, we need to find a factory overseas where we can order a container load of that. And that was kind of the progression we had for going from, product testing, sampling, and we're scaling that from Walmart, Michael's, Derice, and then into our own factory.
Absolutely. And I think that's the lesson to be learned there. Even if you catch a trend, make sure you have a bigger plan. I think
Mhm.
that's it. Make sure you have a bigger plan. And it's not that you saw something and you're like, this is what I'm going to hop onto. And my entire business changes for this one product. I think that's where the biggest problem is. Because if you catch that trend, and if that product doesn't last, all of a sudden you not only are losing at the trend, but you forgot about your core products. And now your customer is confused on what you actually sell,
Yeah.
because the trend is gone. And now it's like you put so much time and effort into it that it ends up being confusing for your customer.
I got a couple other points here before we move on to the next one, but let's talk about carrying too many SKUs and kind of like you mentioned, you're getting lost in your focus. And what happens, talk to me about when a business carries too many SKUs, what can happen to the business?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, well, there's two big things. One big thing is confusion for you and confusion for your customer. If you're carrying too many SKUs, you first of all don't have no clue what you're advertising or how to advertise it or what to do. And by the way, I'm not saying this because I've solved this problem. We have this problem,
Yeah.
right? I want you guys to know, just because we're on this podcast doesn't mean we have figured everything out. But we have this problem. We have so many SKUs. We have a difficult time showcasing those SKUs to everybody. What is this product? What does it do? How does it work? And there's a lot that goes into it. But the other problem you run into by having and carrying too many SKUs and not having a system to properly market and sell them is that your cash flow and your profit is sitting in your warehouse, is sitting in your garage, is sitting in your room. And I think nowadays, with a lot of folks trying to go direct to China, I think they don't understand that, because what they're thinking about is, I got this product cheap. But what you're not thinking is you have to buy so much of it that the profit that you should have had in your bank is now sitting in your room as product that is unsold. And I think those two things are probably the two biggest things of having too many SKUs.
Yeah. And that kind of leads me into the 80/20 rule that we can talk about just briefly. And I want to emphasize the 80/20 rule. And really 80% of your profits and your revenue are going to come from 20% of your products. And so really you got to decide what are you going to focus on? What is that 20% of products that's going to bring in 80% of the revenue? And really, I think the businesses that are winning are focusing on just that. They're focusing on their 20% and realizing that that's going to come and bring in 80% of my revenue.
Yeah. And I think, again, like we mentioned before, this is reality for Mark and I. We're working on this. So, what is MakerFlo known for? What products are we known for? We're known for our tumblers. We're
Mm.
known for our marble products. We're known for selling true flat plywood. We're known for these 4, 5, or 6 products that we're marketing, but we have so many more, right? And so the goal here is to focus on 5, 6 core products. And then the goal is to focus on customer service. Then the goal is to focus on other things
Yeah.
where we hope that you come by and check out our other products. So this is in action, right? This is not like some chat GPT thing we found. We're actually doing this and this is happening in real life. And we're learning that that's how you do it. Now, the way we scale that is we slowly, as we create our systems, we can slowly keep advertising more products, include more products, and do a better job of it and scale it further. But we definitely need those systems to make sure that we can expand wide.
Yeah, I think you want to focus on the fewest things that bring in the most profit. And
Absolutely.
what comes to mind for me on that is the In and Out fast food restaurant. They focus on the fewest things. Burgers and fries brings in the most profit. That is their core, that is what they focus on.
They do it best.
They do it the best. And then from there, they can add on drinks and the chocolate shakes and then the toppings and the upsells and all the other stuff. But they focus on their 20% core, and that brings in 80% of the revenue.
Yeah, I think, yeah, that's such a great point. Like animal style. I didn't even know what animal style was till somebody was like, "Did you know about animal style?" I'm like,
Yeah.
"What about animal style?"
Or you get a 4x4 burger, which is four patties and 4 pieces of cheese. Like, I had no idea they have this hidden menu that makes up the other, little percent.
Yeah, and I think that's the lesson to be learned. They message their core. The rest of it is messaged by everybody else,
Mhm.
right? Everybody talks about it. They go in there and they search it and they get excited about it, and then it's talked about, and then you're known about it,
I like
right?
it.
Yeah. So I think that's a very big lesson. I think that's a huge lesson, by the way,
Yeah.
and it's something that we're still figuring it out. I
Mhm.
don't think we have it figured out, but we know that it's working just because we've implemented some of these things the last 6 months and we've seen a lot of success. Like we saw the hammers sell out in 45 minutes because we put our focus there and we wanted to make it a core product. We've seen True Flat be absolutely successful for us because we focused on it. We made it a priority to make it a top 5 products. Our marble handle, charcuterie, and coasters. So we know the core 5 products. I'm sure the warehouse knows the core 5 products.
Yeah, yeah,
We
yeah.
know our core products and we're putting our focus towards it and we're absolutely crushing it. So I think
Awesome.
enough of that. I
Yeah.
think we've kind of
Just to
drilled that
close that
home.
out, I was just thinking if you're a small business, what are your burger and fries products that make 80% of your revenue? And then what are your animal style and chocolate shake products that bring in the other 20% of your revenue?
Yeah,
Think about it in those terms, help you get across that roadblock.
I love it.
So let's move into the next thing and kind of really